As soon as it stopped, I don't know if you can hear it or not, but as soon as the intro music stopped, there's a cricket that decided now's the time I'm going to come in here
I
and
heard
just
it.
start chirping. Did you hear it?
It was like,
That's amazing.
I was like, oh, it's bleeding over.
This is going to be fun today. So 3 people on the podcast. Welcome everybody. I'm Dustin. He's Blake, and Jiminy Cricket is
Yeah.
joining us as well. Oh, that's not a sign of how this is going to go, but we're excited to be here. Today we're going to talk about how to onboard like a boss, but I want to remind you that we're here to help leaders know what they're about, share where they're going, and develop a scalable team to get there. So if you would love to chat with us about that, you can hop on to theculturebase.com and click the Let's Talk button. And we have a free 30-minute strategy session that you can take advantage of. And we can talk about any of the things that you've got going on with your business to help you accomplish that. And you can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, all at The Culture Base, BASE. There's the socials. Lastly, if you're listening to us on audio podcast platform, we'd appreciate a 5-star review. That helps get this out to more audiences. And if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. It's a 3-in-1 action. Just go ahead and hit all 3 of those. And that way you can be reminded and followed every time, or you won't be followed. You will follow us every time.
We're watching.
We're always watching now. Just hit the bell, subscribe, like, subscribe, and then you'll be notified every time we post any content whatsoever, which we're posting podcasts every Tuesday, some little fun reels and shorts every Wednesday, and some clips from the episode every Thursday that you can share with those in your organization that may be helpful to you. But like I said, today we're going to talk about how to onboard like a boss.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been talking through this hiring process, right, Blake? And we've gotten to the point in which we've found the ideal candidate. We made them an offer. They graciously accepted. We're so thankful. Now the real work begins.
Yeah.
Or does it? What's that look like? That's what we're going to talk about now. So in this episode, we're going to discuss some best practices on how to onboard like a boss. Blake, can you just kind of set the tone for us on this whole onboarding thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we start this process, we think that once they're hired, like it's done. We did it. We accomplished. We got people in the door.
Yep.
So many people stop right there. That they're in now, they're not my problem. And that's kind of where we leave things. We're like, whatever. Now, like we believed all the things we pitched them in the sales process, or not the sales process, but the hiring sales process as we're trying to bring them in. We did it all. And as soon as they're there, we just kind of let it go. We say all the time that the most dangerous places are in transitions. The most dangerous place of your organization for anything is in the transition of it. Okay, so let's get out of hiring, let's get out of onboarding for a second. When you sell something, the most dangerous time is between the sales and the ops of actually fulfilling that thing. It's the most dangerous time because that's when things fall through the crack because there's not clarity on what the expectation is at the next level. So here we are from hiring, which, by the way, if you're like, yeah, hiring is the end, you're wrong. That's why we're here to talk to you today, is because there is a next one, and it's onboarding, how you bring people in. And this becomes so dangerous. If your onboarding doesn't feel, and I am using that word here, feel like you're hiring, there will be a cognitive dissonance. There will be this understanding that these things are not the same. They're not congruent. And so this is why a lot of times, even before we get into all the thises and that's, one of the big things that we're constantly looking at is, does this match who we are and what we said we are? Right? We've talked about brand, and in our last podcast, that's the same thing right here. Does the brand continue to be the way we are? If we were really clear, concise, and understandable early on, do we have that same clarity on what onboarding is going to look like at this next level? Do we have an understanding that here's how long it's going to take? Here are the things we're going to do. Are we getting into those things, or are we just like, ooh, we landed the fish? It's like catching a fish to eat and just leaving it in your boat. and not putting it in water and having some plan for what to do next. It's just like, that'll be good when we get back. It won't. That fish is going to stink to high hell, and you're not going to want to eat it at all. Okay. So this is the idea, is how do we make this work well and congruent?
Yeah, and I think part of that too is to have this is kind of one of our first recommendations for you. Best practices is to have a written and agreed upon process. And here's what I mean. I think the natural instinct when I say that is to be like, okay, agreed upon by who?
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost, agreed upon by everybody on your leadership team and everybody that's going to be involved in the process. Is it ultimately up to everyone? Does it need to be a group vote? No, but they need to kind of fully understand how their role is contributing to these very volatile times, these very fragile times, like Blake said, in these transitions. Also, I think he needs to be agreed upon. Again, when I say agreed upon, I don't mean like we're looking for your permission. I'm just making sure everybody fully understands. You got it. You got it. You got it. Um, from the new hire as well.
Mm.
I think if you can sit down with a new hire and say, okay, we've got your accepted offer. Here's what the next 90 days is going to look like.
Mm.
And maybe even you cover that at the end in your final interview of, hey, if we're able to come to an agreement here, this is what the first 90 days is going to look like.
Mm.
Setting that tone as early as possible is super, super important. And we'll talk about why here in a little bit. But what else you got, Blake, on some of these best practices on onboarding?
Yeah, I think, and you and I talk all the time about, like, we're both just very visual in the way that we understand things. And most people are. When you can draw a picture, you're going to engage people's mind a lot easier. And this is that process that Dustin's talking about. I think it's even healthy. And at the culture base, we highly focus on this, is the ability to have a drawn out picture of what the process looks like at a 30,000
Storyboard.
foot view. Storyboard it. Exactly. Here's what we're going to do this. And they can be like ideas. So like, we have a boot camp, right? When we hire people on, it's 2 weeks long. Okay. Picture boot camp, 2 weeks. Next, like, show them the process. You're going to have a day of onboarding for your platforms and understanding how to use our communication platforms. You know, maybe that's a 1 or 2 day. You draw that out and show what that timeline looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to have some proven process you're putting in their hands. Make it visual, make it tangible. Canva, if you don't know what Canva is, it's a real thing and it's a great thing. Okay. It helps you to develop and draw things real easy. And it's going to give clarity to your team. So that's the only thing I would piggyback on that one. I do think it's important as you go through the process and as you're developing new parts of the process, you can definitely try to figure that out with brand new people as you add a new part of the process. And, you know, and we'll do that too. We'll have, like, I'll go through a part of our process, find out from our new hires, hey, this didn't work very well and this didn't work very well. The next time I do it, we'll have a new part of the process. We're constantly growing it. And then we'll hear if we hear those same issues or if we fix the issue, right? So you're constantly grading that. But it's also helpful that if you're not sure, you want to put brand new people through that onboarding before, like, beta in it a little, to throw some of your newer people or even older people in your organization through that process to see what they would add, because they're going to give you a lot more candor than people who have been with you for a long time, or than new people rather. So I think you're going to get more candor from people who have been alongside you than new people. So they may give you clearer, clearer understandings of what you need to change. Does that make sense?
And I would piggyback on that too, and also say it's not. I think it's a good idea to do this for a lot of reasons, mostly of which Blake just explained. But I would also say as much buy-in and clarity as you can give your current team members about what the onboarding process of new team members is going to look like, the better. Here's what you don't want. You don't want the new hire coming to an existing employee, them asking them a question about their onboarding process, and the current team member says, I don't know.
Mm,
I don't have no idea what that looks like.
good point.
That is big time weakness
Good point.
and a major flaw in your process. So at this point, we've already shown them a story. We've shown our current team members a storyboard
Mhm.
of that process that we all agreed upon, and we all said everybody understands their role. Now we're going to physically walk them through that process as well.
Yeah.
Yes, for feedback, but also for even greater understanding. There are visual learners, and then there are tactical learners, and people that need to actually go through it and do it to really fully understand it. And so now, if they've done that, when the new hire comes to a current team member and says, hey, we haven't talked about this yet, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's coming next week. It's going to be awesome. You're going to talk to Bill about that. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
so for them to be like, man, this, how intentional is this? Like, okay, cool. I can just kind of relax, and we can drop our guard a little bit, because, which leads me to my next point. This whole onboarding thing can be extremely overwhelming. Yes, for you, but also for the new hire, for everyone on board. Your team is excited because you finally hired the position that you told them that you were going to be hiring, to lighten some of their load so
Yeah.
that they can offload some things so that their team can expand. And they're like, man, I'm ready to get this person in the mix. Let's just pump the brakes for a second.
Hmm.
Everyone's excited. I know it's Christmas morning, but like, let's just open up one present at a time and let everybody show it before we move on to the next. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, just calm down a little bit. You need to understand as much, and they might be super eager too. Your new hire may be super eager to be like, when I get my hands dirty. Yes, we will get that going for sure.
Hmm.
But understand it's going to take some time. Here's what you're doing by doing this. You are setting the tone for self-care
Hmm.
for that new team member
Hmm.
right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Blake says it best. Don't be the reason for their burnout,
Yeah.
especially in the first 90 days.
Yeah.
It's not good at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, it's a good way. Like if you're like, oh, you know what, we're 40 hours a week and we stop and we're good and we understand this work-life balance. And if all of a sudden you have a project that's requiring 60 to 70 hours a week, doesn't mean you don't like do the project. Of course you need to do whatever you need to do, but being really clear about what's happening and maybe not throwing your brand new person on that thing, right? Help them not be the one to get overwhelmed, because they'll be like, oh, this is normal now. And I didn't expect this. You're clear about that up front. Maybe not as big of a deal, right?
Yeah.
That you're clear. They understand, yeah, it's a lot of overtime and that's what I'm here for. I want this overtime. That's great. But I think the big thing here is, when you onboard well, it shows you care.
Mm.
It just shows that you care about the person. When you don't onboard well, you got what you wanted, they're in. Now you don't have to worry about it. That may not be true, and that may not be why you don't onboard, but I'm telling you, they are probably going to be finishing the story in their head that that's what it is. They're going to believe, well, I thought they cared. They were so engaged early on, and now they're not. Did I do something wrong? Like, why do they not care? And caring is just being clear. Like, someone told me one time, with, I want to say it was like admissions in college. They said that one of the best ways to show you care is to be clear. Like, clarity is kindness, is what they said.
Mm.
It's like, oh, that's really
Yeah.
good. And so the more we can be clear and develop what they need and be kind, is going to show we do care about you. We care about your development. We care about you not getting burnt out. If you're getting burnt out on normal operations, maybe we need to be looking in this 90 days if this is going to be a long-term thing. Because your normal operations, if people are burning out on your normal operations that you've been clear about, they might not be a good fit there. And sometimes you just got to learn that the hard way, or maybe have different interview questions if that's what you're looking at. Right. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, you definitely want to involve as many people in the process of this as well. Like, that would be another thing I'd add here, is we want to involve not just like here's the onboarding person who's also the hiring person. And as soon as they go through that process, they're out. And now your new hire feels like they've lost the only sense of comfort they had.
Yeah.
They're just off in the middle of nowhere.
They're
And
stranded on a piece of shipwreck out in the middle of the ocean going, hello?
yeah. And then they find some people, but they're still like, I don't know if I can trust this person.
Yeah.
And that's why you want to start involving people in the process. So if you've got that storyboard, right, of how things go, like have insert character here. Oh, they, the main character, the new hire meets so and so on the journey. And like, as dumb as that sounds, that's what you want to be thinking through because you're creating the story. And so when do they meet the person they're going to be with? Maybe a foreman or a leader or a job lead or a project manager that they're going to be with consistently. Figure out when is the best time for them to meet. And when is the best time for them to meet other people who are their peer group in this new hire group or whatever. So I think it sounds silly, but I'm telling you, the more you can play that out and draw that out, the better you're going to keep that. I feel comfortable enough to continue on at the effort I've got. Instead of some people, when they just have zero comfort, they bail. And so it's just trying to figure out the right timing of it all.
Yeah, I think just to kind of keep going back to that analogy, or not even an analogy, but the practical tool of the storyboard, I would suggest every step of the process that you just ask yourself the who, what, when, where, how, why questions.
Yeah.
If you can fill in those questions for every clip or every scene of the storyboard, if you will, throughout, then you'll have, I know who's involved here, I know why they're involved here, how they're involved here, what they're going to be doing with them, what they're going to be learning, like all of those things kind of, if you can just answer those simple. So don't be overwhelmed with like, oh man, I got to draw out stick figures and all this other stuff. Like just understand, if you can just ask yourself those basic questions, then the picture will begin to paint itself for you really clearly, very clearly and quickly. But part of this too is talk about meeting people along their journey is something that we've seen be really beneficial before with a lot of successful companies and really great cultures is to assign your new hire an onboarding coach. Now, I personally don't, a lot of people call it a buddy. I just think that's a little kind of childish. We're all adults here and that but I like the word coach because that's the person that I can go to and lean on for answers. My buddy may not have all the answers all the time, but my coach will, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I'm trusting that coach. So you need to prepare these people. These are people that you've pinpointed out in your organization to go, I see your leadership skills. Why don't we make you an onboarding coach for this department? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And talking about when to introduce them, that would be like as soon as possible to introduce this person to them. This is the person that they're not going to have to wonder. They're not going to have to sit on that piece of shipwreck out in the ocean and go, hello, does anyone care? They're going to go, oh, this is my onboarding coach. Here's his number. Here's how I get in touch with them. I'm going to contact them immediately. I'm going to have a regular lunch with him for the first however many days, and we're going to sit down and we're going to talk and we're going to ask questions. And I still don't quite understand this. Like all those types of things are going to come out through that coaching relationship. It builds leaders in your organization, which is always a good thing. It's always a benefit. It builds camaraderie. It builds trust. There's really no lose situation here. And you might think, well, I might need that coach to be doing other things. Listen, there is no more important development in your company than the development of your people.
Yeah, for sure.
Nothing. So assign them a really great coach. Make sure that the coach understands what's expected of them and that they're excited about it too, and that they see it as a growth opportunity for themselves as well.
Yeah. Another part to burnout that we don't often think about because we tend to, as leaders and whatever, start like we're just naturally about results. I think it's important that we develop good ways for them to see their results quickly. And not like this isn't fake. This isn't like some pandering kind of thing. This is a way for them to understand that they're hitting certain metrics. And by doing so, they're doing the right stuff. Because when you're able to hit that, like one of the reasons we often have burnout is that we're not getting the results we want to get in our life. And so by helping to show them, hey, this isn't just like, hey, you're doing a good job as an electrician putting wires in. Hey, I see that you've hit these metrics and that's great. you are putting in X amount of these at a time. That's way far beyond what we were expecting. We were only expecting this. Way to go. Like that kind of a thing early on in the onboarding process is going to create a good neural pathway for them to know, hey, I'm hitting results and that's returning a dopamine hit back to me that is good. Like I feel good about this and I feel like I'm in the right place. And if they're hitting no results, might also be telling you some other stuff in the process.
Yeah. Which is, kind of leads us to our final point of today is kind of the biggest. I was actually just reading this morning in Dan Martell's book, Buy Back Your Time. He was talking about the biggest F word in leadership is feedback. And so that's what we want. Whether we fear it or not, it's the most helpful thing out there. And so our last kind of tip for you is to ask them at the end of their 90 days or however long your onboarding process is, to ask them, hey, how would you grade this onboarding process? And get specific. Hey, what would you change about this if we're going to hire someone else in your exact same position down the road? What would you change about it? And ask them, like I said, as soon as the onboarding process is done, while it's still fresh, and then ask them that, and then ask them, hey, what still doesn't make sense to you? What questions do you still have? Because that'll show you where your holes are. So just like a lot of other processes are always living and breathing and evolving and expanding, this one's no different. This is not I'm going to sign this thing and put it under bulletproof glass and that's the way it's always going to be. This is something that, like, every time you get this feedback from a new hire and they've finished their onboarding process, you're going to go, okay, let's tweak this. Let's move that person down the storyboard. We don't need to introduce them so soon. We overwhelmed them here. They were lost here. They were too confused here. This was a really good point. Let's make sure we're reemphasizing that. And you can kind of see all those things. And so many, I get so convicted when we're talking about onboarding that so many leaders don't spend the intentionality here that they really need to. And I really think as we're continuing to talk to more businesses and more leaders, that their frustration point really could probably be traced back to this. Even more than like, oh, I just didn't ask the right interview questions, or, oh, I didn't vet them enough before I brought them on. I'm almost willing to bet you that your problems could be traced back to these first 90 days or 2 weeks or however long your onboarding process is. This is so, so important. Take the time to review this. Take the time to intentionally lay it out. It may sound overwhelming, but I promise you the benefits and the fruit of it on the other side are well worth it. If you want to get that turnover down and that good culture up, this is part of it.
Yeah, hands down. I don't have anything else to say. That was spot on, man.
Perfect. So let's see, what do we got to do? So if you want to talk to us about this, about some ideas on how we can help you with your onboarding strategy, you have a free 30-minute strategy session at theculturebase.com. You can click on the strategy button and book a time with us there. The free turnover calculator is still on its way. And next episode, now that we have the person onboarded and kind of we sent them off on their journey, not alone, we're with them, but they're on the journey now. They've started the path within your organization. Now we're going to get into some of the retention part of it, which for us really is heavily dependent on their development. And so next episode, we're going to talk, does team development really matter? And you might say, well, yes, of course, or I don't see the point in that. We're going to kind of adjust. We're going to kind of discuss all different sides of that. So we can't wait to talk to you then. Talk to you next time on the Culture Base Podcast.